Wildfires caused by arsonists and thunderstorms fanned by heat wave and strong winds wreaked destruction across southern Europe on Wednesday, burning homes and forcing thousands of residents and tourists to flee. The BBC's Sasha Schittler.
The fire department said the situation in Patras was much improved after a fierce overnight struggle, though scattered pockets of flames remained and the fire was still active in the eastern outskirts. On Wednesday, a children's hospital and a retirement home had to be evacuated as the flames had moved dangerously close.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Bafana will face off with Niger, eyeing a quarter-final berth at the Chan 2024 tournament, while Coco Golf makes it into the quarter-finals of the Cincinnati Open. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, so after the news every day on Rise and Shine, we bring you some stories happening in and around our continent. We call this feature the Africa Roundup. So it's compiled by our team of researchers, our reporters and editors to make sure that you get in the know and as also to gauge in terms of what we can expect to develop in news. And today we start with South Africa, where South Africa's presidency has clarified that the trip to Iran by Army Chief General Rudzani Mapwanya was not officially approved. The statement comes after widespread criticism that his comments exceeded standard military-to-military discussions. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya warned that Mapwanya's remarks could complicate ongoing trade negotiations with the United States.
On Iran and the general's visit, did the president know that the general was visiting Iran? Neither did he sanction that visit. The general's sort of administrative process for travel approval starts and ends with the minister, as much as the president is the appointing authority and the commander-in-chief. He does not get involved in supervising the general's travel. That process sits with the minister. So the president did not know. Is there concern? Yes, there is a concern. At this period of heightened geopolitical tensions, as well as conflict in the Middle East, one can say the visit was ill-advised.
Bouaké, a central Ivorian city and former rebel stronghold, still shows bullet damage, but President Alassane Ouattara is presenting it as a symbol of recovery ahead of its third-term campaign. The city hosted its first Independence Day parade in over 60 years a week ago, a sign of returned peace, though residents say that divisions and economic challenges persist.
According to political analyst Geoffroy Julien Kouao, it sends the message that peace has returned after the civil war that preceded Ouattara's swearing in 2011.
Celebrating independence in Bouaké shows that the crisis is completely behind us and that today the country is truly unified. On the economic front, don't forget that Bouaké is the second economic capital of Ivory Coast.
But away from the pomp and ceremony, division still lingers. Here's Fousseni Tour, a member of a civil society group that advocates for former fighters.
When it comes to former fighters, generally when people know we are ex-combatants when we are applying for jobs, they refuse us because they know we took up arms. To this day, it still weighs on us. They are afraid of us.
Zambia's Defense Minister Ambrose Lufuma has called for urgent action against illegal mining, citing threats to national security, the economy and the environment. Speaking at the opening of a stakeholders meeting in Lusaka, he accused some local officials of taking bribes to facilitate the illicit operations, which are often unsafe and environmentally destructive.
Illegal mining poses a significant threat to our nation's economy, but also the environment and social fabric. Economically, illegal mining deprives the government of vital revenue through unpaid taxes and royalties. It is imperative that we strengthen our collective efforts to combat this menace through enhanced law enforcement, stricter regulatory frameworks, and sustainable development initiatives that prioritize the well-being of our citizens.
Now, vital medical supplies, including insulin, are increasingly hard to obtain in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where M23 rebel activity has surged since January. Patients are bearing the brunt of a growing conflict that has severely disrupted healthcare in the region. Sean Hogan picks up the story.
In a small refrigerator at the Kivu Diabetes Centre in Bukavu, Eastern Congo, Dr. Albert Kalezo carefully guards his dwindling supply of insulin, each vial a lifeline for diabetic patients.
Since the current crisis, access to insulin has been difficult. Even before, insulin access was expensive. For these children, I prescribe treatment, but they are not able to obtain it.
The closure of Goma Airport, a crucial hub for medicine shipments, has left healthcare providers scrambling. Kalezo now travels to neighbouring Rwanda to procure supplies, though these efforts often fall short.
Journalists from various media houses united at a vigil held at the Al Jazeera's office in Johannesburg, South Africa, to denounce the killing of several journalists in Gaza over the weekend. This after 6 Palestinian journalists were killed on Sunday, allegedly by an Israel strike. They also held a memorial march and screened a documentary called Gaza, Journalists Under Fire.
It's not fair. It's not really fair because, if they don't tell it, who else will? And I don't see why people should be killed for telling the story, If it's wrong, then tell them they're wrong, but don't kill them. So them being killed, it proves that, what they're saying is actually right.
This is why an attack on journalists, the assassination of journalists, the targeting of journalists is a crime against humanity. It is not an ordinary crime because of what journalists represent. Journalists represent the right of human beings to know what is happening around them. Journalists represent, they are the living embodiment of our freedom of expression.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll have another one for you on Monday morning after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us, so much more still to come right here on Rise and Shine.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's presidency has confirmed that the highly anticipated National Convention will proceed in Pretoria, regardless of whether former President Thabo Mbeki, his foundation, and 6 other prominent foundations take part. The group, which includes the Steve Biko Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, and the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, has criticized what it calls inadequate preparation and a rushed timeline for the 2-day gathering. President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to officially open the convention today. Ndebo Mugobo reports.
Despite having called for the national dialogue and pledging their participation in its preparatory meetings, the 7 foundations of eminent leaders, including some former presidents, have walked out of today's preparatory gathering, the National Convention. But presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says this foundation represents no constituency, insisting the meeting will go without them.
With all due respect, these foundations do not represent the majority of South Africans. They were never set up to be constituency groups as far as we understand them, unless that has changed. They do not represent any particular constituency. We now are sitting close to 1,000 confirmed delegates. And so the convention will be representative of all sectors of our society. The credibility of the national dialogue is going to be the level of participation across communities. And that credibility cannot be determined by one person, neither can it be determined by 7 foundations. South Africa is much bigger than any one individual or any other foundations.
He said it would have been good to have former President Thabo Mbeki at the meeting, as he has been at the forefront of calling for the national dialogue. Magwenya has expressed the hope that Mbeki and this foundation might join them later.
It would have been great to have the former president there, but if he's not there, he's not there. The reality is that the show will go on and South Africans will continue with the dialogue process, and hopefully at some point, not only the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, but other foundations will find it amongst themselves to participate in the process and realize that there is no benefit out of boycotting the people of South Africa. They're not boycotting the president, they're not boycotting government, they're boycotting the people of South Africa in their exercise. And therefore, those who choose not to participate are not in any shape or form disadvantaging the president in any way, or government for that matter.
On the latest remarks by SANDF Chief General Rudzane Maphanya during his visit to Iran, where he reportedly expressed complete political solidarity with Tehran, Magwenya says senior military officers do not engage outside of their military purview and that they do not represent the country on foreign policy matters, neither are they delegated to perform such functions.
The general's travel approval starts and ends with the minister. As much as the president is the appointing authority and the commander-in-chief, he does not get involved in supervising the general's travel. So the president did not know. There is a concern. At this period of heightened geopolitical tension, as well as conflict in the Middle East, one can say the visit was ill-advised. And more so, the expectation is that the general should have been a lot more circumspect with the comments he makes, which delve into the area of foreign policy that only the president as well as the Department of International Relations are responsible for.
But the presidential spokesperson insists that although they take a dim view on Maphanya's remarks, his visit to Iran accordingly was not to be authorized by the president, but by his immediate boss, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. I am Tebo Mokobe in Johannesburg.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Leaders in Africa have called for urgent and coordinated investment in water infrastructure, warning that the climate change, population growth and outdated systems are deepening water insecurity across the continent. The calls were made at the AU-AIP Africa Water Investment Summit, which is currently underway in Cape Town in South Africa. For more on this, Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu spoke to Moses Vilakati, who's the AU Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment.
One of the reasons why we're here and we have brought in financial institutions is to make sure that those projects that are bankable can now be financed. And we're looking at a huge number of projects that we believe are going to end up being financed. But once these projects are financed, they save countries, as well as communities. And in most cases, we find that they serve different countries, maybe 2 or 3 countries. Yesterday, the president talked about a big project that he just launched, and obviously it is targeting communities. So that then helps communities. But more often than not, these projects would like to see the water supporting the people for livelihoods, 2, supporting agriculture for food security, 3, supporting energy. These are the core programs that would like to see being enhanced through these projects. So communities indeed are therefore supported through what we're doing today.
You alluded to finances, saying that you've also brought in banks to be part of the summit. How then do you hope to close the investment gap that has been spoken about?
This is a $1 million question, because as we're here, we're all appealing to the financial institutions. In particular, why it's now a $1 million question is because the geopolitics that is obtained when it comes to financial flows are now a challenge. But be that as it may, we are saying let member states now look inward instead of looking outward. Before we're dependent on grants, before we're dependent on this, but the geopolitics is saying, hey, take care of yourselves. So we see huge opportunities, particularly with the pension funds, the various banking institutions, etc., including our own, the AFDB Bank, African Bank, Standard Bank, Nedbank, and everybody. If all of those come together, they will be able to salvage the situation, because we are looking at US $30 billion per year. That's a mammoth task, because it calls for sometimes the construction of dams, then taking the water to the communities. It looks at energy, because as you have the water, then you can be able to generate electricity. It also looks at piping the water to the communities. Sometimes these communities are not well settled. One homestead is here, the next one is afar, but you still have to have a pipe to get the water to those communities, because they are part and parcel of our various countries. So we are hoping that with the financial institutions, as mentioned, we should be able to reduce the gap. I was happy yesterday when AFDB made a presentation and said annually, I think they talked of $12 billion US targeting such projects, but they are saying we want to scale it up. That is the positive vibe that we get, which excites some of us.
What are you hoping will be the key takeaways from this gathering?
I think for me, the key takeaways, let me start by thanking the heads of states that were able to come, because once there's a political presence of heads of states, then it becomes easier for some of us now to navigate this route. And all of them were talking about one thing: finance us, please assist us to finance various projects. So my takeaway was then coming to the financiers also, there is that intent to support, which is very good. So my takeaway from this, particularly when it comes to the declaration, is that each person is now getting clearer that we need about US 30 billion per annum. Now, how we harness that, that's a different ballgame. But the fact of the matter that we now know, this is how much we need. In the past, we're only looking at maybe food security, because our imports, we expend about US 50 to 100 billion per annum. This is exporting money, which is supposed to be we're supposed to be using for our health system, our roads, etc., etc. So we need to seriously think about this. Now, with water again, we are having communities that travel over 4 or 5 kilometers sometimes just fetching water. At this stage and age, we need to be saying no woman, no human being should be having challenge is accessing water, because it's a right, it's for human dignity, it's about ourselves. So my takeaway is that everybody will now be putting his or hands and their heads together and saying, how do we harness water using whatever resources that we can have?
That was Moses Villakatu, who's the AU Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment. And he was speaking to Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Role players in the aviation sector globally are trying their utmost best to place aviation as the safest mode of transportation. According to the latest report from the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, the year 2024 recorded the highest number of fatal accidents in the past 6 years and an increase in accidents. Channel Africa's reporter Sisi Sekhalo engaged some of the authorities at the ICAO Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit, which began on Monday and ended on Thursday in Durban, South Africa, about their measures of safety in aviation.
The host of the summit, South Africa, prides itself on having a remarkable aviation safety record. This is according to the South African Civil Aviation Authority, SACA's Executive for Accident Investigation, Themba Tabete. Tabete expressed that their role is to independently investigate accidents in the aviation sector in an effort to determine their causes and prevent reoccurrence. The authority complies with international standards. Tabete elaborates on how they try to attain safety in aviation in South Africa.
So we improve safety by doing this reactive role, which really is a science on itself, where through techniques we need to get to the bottom of what causes accidents and use that information for improved safety posture.
Sierra Leone is a West African developing country which has just over 8 million people. The Sierra Leone Civil Aviation Authority's Director General is the youngest in the world, being just under the age of 40. Musayero Berry, too, also emphasizes that her country ensures that their safety and security benchmarks are top-notch.
So at the moment, our safety rating is about 72.6%, and our security rating is at 71.9%. World class, these are recognized as very good scores. So we take aviation really seriously. We know the role it can play in driving any economy forward, but we're still working on having that cultural awareness and having everybody involved in making sure that aviation is where it should be in our country. But we're very proud of the gains we've made, and we continue to work really hard to sustain them and build on them.
Some of the closing topics at the summit are collaborating for the future, regional and global partnerships for a resilient workforce. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Durban, South Africa.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
All right. It's 6:30 Central African time. That's what's happening right now, which means it's time to catch you up with the news with Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. A full bench of the High Court in South Africa, Pretoria, will this morning hear the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family's bid for leave to appeal the judgment, declaring the Zambian government was entitled to repatriate the former Zambian president's body for a state funeral and burial. The authorities in Mali say a French national suspected of spying for the French army has been arrested. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about the possibility of peace between Russia and Ukraine. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports as Musibudi Makura gives us an update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start with cricket news this hour. So Proteas batter Tristan Stubbs has made it clear that they'll go for the jugular when they face off with Australia in the third and final T20 match this Saturday. Now, South Africa beat the home side by a comprehensive 53 runs in the second match on Tuesday, levelling the series 1-1 and then setting up what is effectively going to be a mouth-watering final this weekend. Stubbs says winning the series against Australia in their own backyard would mean a lot to the Proteas.
I'm really excited. After the first one, it's really important to bounce back, and it sets up well for a series decider tomorrow or Saturday. I mean, for us, we're a young side, to win a series here in Australia will be really cool for us and take momentum. We go straight to England after this, so I think that's the big goal right now, to win Saturday's game.
Now, the first two games were played in Darwin, while the third game will be played at the Casles Stadium in the city of Cairns. Now, Stubbs noted the climate changes in the new city and expects that to play a part in the match for tomorrow.
I'm really excited. After the first one, it's really important to bounce back, and it sets up well for a series decider tomorrow or Saturday. I mean, for us, we're a young side, to win a series here in Australia will be really cool for us and take momentum. We go straight to England after this, so I think that's the big goal right now, to win Saturday's game.
On to some tennis news now. Defending champion Yannick Sinner swept past Felix Auger-Aliassime 6-love and 6-2 on Thursday to reach the Cincinnati semi-finals, with the world number one extending his hard-court winning streak to officially now 25 matches. Now, Sinner delivered a dominant performance, capitalizing on his opponent's 29 unforced errors to claim his first win in 3 meetings against the Canadian 23rd seed in just 71 minutes. The 23-year-old Italian became only the 5th man this century to record 25 consecutive victories on the surface alongside Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, as well as Andy Murray. He will face next French qualifier Terence Atmane, who continued his impressive run by upsetting Danish 7th-seed Holger Rune 6-2 and 6-3. Meanwhile, the world number 2 Coco Gauff beat Lucia Bronzetti 6-2 and 6-4 to book her place in the quarterfinals of the Cincinnati Open. The two players had progressed to the last 16 in contrasting ways, with Gauff having won her only match in straight sets before a walkover against Diana Jaskremska in the last round. Now, Bronzetti, on the other hand, had come through 3 sets in her previous 3 rounds, and also the world number 61 quickly found herself 3-love down. Gauff was broken in the 5th game, but it proved a brief blip as she went on to win the opening set in 33 minutes. Now, the American went 2-love up in the second set, but suffered another lapse when she was broken 2-love by the Italian in the 3rd game. So Gauff will next face Italy's Yasmin Paolini in the next round, who won 6-1 and 6-2 against Barbora Krejcikova of the Czech Republic. And finally, the first batch of Kenya women volleyball team Malka strikers have departed and did so on Thursday night ahead of the Federation of International Volleyball 2025 World Championship, which commences on the 22nd of August to conclude on the 7th of September in Thailand. Now, the second batch of the final 14 athletes will leave today. Now, the East African outfit will play friendly matches in Vietnam before going to Thailand for the championship. It's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. It's 6:35 a.m. Central African time. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. With Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea ukiona ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
It's time now for some business news as we say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. CEO of Azula Energy, Adriano Mongini, says the company is considering another gas exploration well after leading the country's first drilling campaign targeting gas and heating success last month. Angola expects gas production to rise more than 20% in the next 5 years as it targets higher exports to Europe and Asia and to meet growing domestic demand, while its oil output stagnates despite the country exiting OPEC. Sub-Saharan Africa's second largest crude producer after Nigeria, Angola is pivoting towards natural gas to help drive an industrialization program based on favorable investment. A South African court has rescinded an environmental authorization granted to Total Energies and its joint venture partner Shell to explore for oil in a block off the Cape Coast. However, the court said Total Energies should be given a chance to rectify deficiencies identified, including a failure to properly assess the potential socio-economic impact of any oil spills or take climate change into consideration. The order is the latest in a series of court challenges between environmentalists and oil companies looking to explore along South Africa's coast. Motor trade sales in South Africa increased by 3.1% year-on-year in June 2025. Contributors were sales of accessories, new and used vehicle sales. According to Stats SA, measured in real terms, the prices of vehicle sales have been constant since 2019. Notando Magudulela reports.
In the second quarter of 2025, motor trade sales increased by 2.5%. The positive contributors to this increase were new vehicle sales, sales of accessories, and used vehicle sales. The large negative contributor was workshop income. Seasonally adjusted motor trade sales were flat in June compared with May 2025. This followed month-on-month changes of 0.2% in May and 0% in April.
The director of the East African School of Aviation in Kenya, Sarah Waitiki, has highlighted the urgent need to actively support and strengthen aviation training worldwide. Waitiki said this to Channel Africa on the last day of the ICAO Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit in Durban, South Africa. She believes authorities should contribute their part to this effort.
Governments must provide scholarships for students, especially the needy students who are also bright from very marginalized societies, must provide scholarships, must provide funding so that we don't just inspire people or young people to come into the industry, but we also sustain them.
The US dollar has ticked marginally higher against other major currencies in calm market trading but stayed close to multi-week lows as bets that the Federal Reserve will resume cutting interest rates next month rose. Backing the trend was the yen, with the dollar touching a 3-week low against the Japanese currency. A hot producer price index for July saw the dollar spike marginally higher in afternoon trading, but markets were largely steady during morning trading in Europe. Let's now shift our focus to financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 532. In Botswana, 13 pula 26. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 412. Zambia, 23 kwacha 10. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40. Russia 79 rubles 64, India 87 rupee 57, China 71.17, South Africa 17 rand 56 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,340, platinum at $1,351 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $66.72 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Now, our G20 fact for this 15th of August is the G20 presidency is responsible for bringing together the G20 agenda in consultation with other members and in response to developments in the global economy. To ensure continuity, the presidency is supported by a troika made up of the current, immediate, past and next host countries. During South Africa's presidency, the members of the G20 troika are Brazil, South Africa and the United States. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality and sustainability.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa.
Okay.
Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
The SABC, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Vendors or suppliers wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. The vendors are able to access this platform on our website www.sabc.co.za / e-tenders or self-register at etendersabc.co.za and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Acting Deputy CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation, SAIT, Dr. Kitumetse Sisana, has raised concerns about tax collection inefficiencies and systemic vulnerabilities within the South African Revenue Service. Speaking to Channel Africa at the 3-day 12th annual SAIT Tax Indaba in Johannesburg, Dr. Sisana cited rising unemployment, a weakened tax-to-GDP ratio and rampant cybercrime as key challenges undermining SARS's ability to collect revenue. Michael Mbewe has more.
The high-impact event brought together thought leaders, industry professionals and policymakers to discuss one of the country's most critical challenges in a heated political climate. In addition to tax policy, the event also explored SARS, operational developments, and practitioner trends, with a panel of experts providing attendees with a comprehensive understanding of the systemic issues affecting South Africa's tax framework and offer tangible, actionable insights on how to navigate these challenges. Here is SAIT Acting CEO Dr. Kitumetse Sisana on South Africa's debt and tax collection.
We saw those shocking unemployment stats that came out with an increase in unemployment. Just going back to the part of your question, so about 22 cents of every rand goes towards servicing debt in South Africa. Our tax to GDP ratio is actually at a shocking standard right now. So there's a lot of debt that we're using to finance. And that is why the National Treasury has now come out to capacitate SARS in order for them to go out and collect the money that's due to the fiscus. Issues that were affecting the South African Revenue Services from being able to collect has been access to information, access to taxpayer. And that is why the Dr. Johnson Makhuba in his keynote address mentioned the whole of government approach that the SARS is going to undertake going forward into Vision 2030, in essential meaning that these government departments have to be integrated. If I transact with one end, SARS should know that I've transacted and it should then collect the tax on the other side. So those are the key issues that were preventing SARS from collecting what they need to collect because they don't have the access to the information. Where is the money sitting?
With SARS electronic system loaded as the best, cybercrime seems to outweigh the sophisticated SARS system.
The issues that taxpayers are facing is prevalent cybersecurity crimes that does not on the face of it seem as if SARS is adequately resolving. So for many years we've had instances of e-filing profile hijack where essentially criminals, although the systems of SARS are so sophisticated, are somehow finding loopholes. They would enter into your profile, they would change your banking details, and if SARS owes you a refund, you never get the money. The money goes to that criminal. They file null returns, they file erroneous, fraudulent returns that will generate high levels of refunds that people never get. So those are some of the systemic issues that we've approached the tax ombudsman to help with in terms of access to certain systems.
Dr. Sisana also highlighted growing frustration among tax practitioners over poor access to SARS.
Also instances that we've raised with her regarding access to SARS. So SARS would say that they're at your service, and we're very pleased to see the level of SARS officials that were here that came out to show a human face behind the actual brand, to say truly they are at our service. Issues of contacting SARS. Our members as tax practitioners obviously need to collaborate with SARS, but they at times find it difficult to even get through on a phone call.
As South Africa is at a crucial juncture facing mounting debt and stagnating growth with a tax burden, the need for bold reform is more pressing than ever, including a crackdown on tax evaders.
So the best way is for SARS to have access to information. They're not able to clamp down if they don't know who are the people who are evading their responsibilities of paying tax. In fact, that's very interesting. You should not be evading tax, but you can avoid it. You can bring down your liability to paying just the right amount of tax. But we have those people operating outside of the tax net, evading it completely. SARS has established a high net worth individuals unit. They undertake lifestyle audits. We understand that even in the debt process, they can garnish accounts and take the money from those people who have been evading tax. We've seen multiple, prominent people in the media lately and what SARS has been consistently going after. Those are some of the projects that they are undertaking because for many years, SARS has been taxing the same amount of people, the same base. There's only so much money they can extract from already compliant taxpayers because it just doesn't work. We need to go after those who are out the net, who are not paying the taxes and bring them in, and therefore we lessen the burden on those who are already compliant.
As the South African tax season continues, challenges occur at times. For disputes, complaints are directed to the Office of the Tax Ombudsman for resolution. Specialist Communications Outreach at the South African Office of the Tax Ombudsman is Russell Mamabulu.
Whatever complaints that have been raised with SARS and, taxpayers get frustrated, they must know there is an alternative body that they are able to approach and make sure that they raise their concerns with us where SARS fails to meet them in terms of their expectations and they have engaged to a certain extent that they have reached a wall.
Tax practitioner, founder and owner of Alpheus Hlongwane Associates, Alpheus Hlongwane had the following insights on the Indaba.
Flowing from the discussions that we had, SARS acknowledges the mistakes or weaknesses that they have in terms of the processes on their side, and also practitioners we must also improve, in terms of transparency, because we need to protect the fiscus. At the end of the day, it is about all of us, and we need to contribute to the fiscus. We must play our part, and SARS also must play their part in resolving this, and also to expedite the processes of resolving tax disputes. Some tax disputes take too long, and which in the long run, some of these disputes, if they are not resolved on time, they destroy business.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Young couples or young people that are getting married, we often hear of divorces, that they're getting divorced, and it's quite worrying because when we attend these weddings, we want to see these people flourish and celebrate 30-year anniversaries. What do you think is the main challenge that is facing newlyweds?
We say that tell me how you were raised and I'll tell you how you love. So when we see people getting married, that's not where the relationship actually starts. The relationship starts with how you were raised, what you were familiar with, because we are attracted to what we are familiar with. If you don't have a background where love was prominent, where love was authentic, it's going to be very difficult for you to manufacture that in later life. So our upbringing has something to do with it.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The Recycling and Economic Development Initiative of South Africa, REDISA, has warned that illegal tyre dumping and burning is creating an environmental and health crisis in the country. The organisation is calling on government to urgently implement a functional waste tyre management plan. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange has more.
Illegal tyre dumping and burning has been reported in several communities, including areas outside the city of Gqeberha, Freedom Park in Soweto Township, and along Beda and Powell Road in the city of Cape Town. Tyres clogging riverbeds and being set alight for warmth are becoming common sights. Stacey Jensen, Executive Director of Operations for REDISA, says urgent intervention is needed.
The most urgent step is to implement a functional, accountable waste tyre management plan without delay. The system must restore proper collection and recycling, employ and track waste collectors and transporters, and ensure that the fee collected annually is used solely for tyre management. Without this, the illegal dumping and burning will continue to spread, damaging public health and the environment.
Jensen says a workable solution must be based on evidence and proven models.
An effective plan would be evidence-based and built on a proven model, such as REDISA's 2012 to 2017 program. It should set clear environmental targets, be fully transparent in how funds are spent, support small and medium enterprises in the waste sector, and operate under the polluters pays principle, in other words, privately managed. Most importantly, it must have nationwide collection coverage so that tyres are never left to pile up in depots or dumped in communities or worse still burnt.
During the period REDISA managed the national plan, it created thousands of jobs and diverted hundreds of thousands of tons of tyres from illegal disposal. This is according to Jensen.
When REDISA managed the national plan, we created over 3,000 jobs and supported more than 226 small businesses, from waste collectors to recyclers. We diverted more than 306,000 tons of tyres from illegal dumping, turning them into raw materials for new products, road construction, and energy recovery and reuse. Reviving this system could again employ thousands, especially in lower income areas, and research shows that applying similar models to other waste streams could boost GDP by up to 1.5%.
But Jensen warns that the country lacks critical data on the true scale of the environmental and health impacts of waste tyre pollution.
The lack of data, whether it's in collection figures, recycling figures, or even health impacts, is a big concern to REDISA. Medical research has highlighted the poisonous nature of waste tyre pollution, especially when tyres are set alight. So we are in this terrible situation where, damage is being done, large-scale damage, but nobody has quantified it. In an ideal setup, our government would have been able to commission such impact studies.
Retisa says a new functional national tire management plan could not only address the environmental damage but also create significant economic opportunities through recycling and the circular economy. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa. Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
New Zealand says it is weighing up whether or not to recognize a Palestinian state. It comes after Australia, France and the UK said it would recognize a Palestinian state at a UN General Assembly meeting in September. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, says Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, has, quote, lost the plot, end quote. Meanwhile, amid the chaos of war in Gaza, a different sound rises music. In the tent camps and school shelters where families seek refuge, melodies now offer a rare sense of comfort and normalcy. More on this is this Reuters report.
From inside a tent in the ruins of Gaza City, a song.
The idea of this project coming from some of my friends bring a guitar and I take the guitar and play and all the kids gathering around me. And in these moments, we forget the war. So this is coming light in my head. Why not we make some activity, music activity, despite this war? I call my colleagues in Edward Said Conservatory about this activities and they told me we are with you.
Ahmed Abu Amsha is one of a handful of teachers from the Edward Said National Conservatory of Music who have continued to offer children music classes in the midst of a harrowing war. For the past 6 months, he has been living and working in the city's central district, along with colleagues. They also go into kindergartens for sessions with small children. The Edward Said Conservatory was founded in the West Bank and opened a branch in Gaza 13 years ago. Before the current war, Israel sometimes granted the best students exit permits to travel outside Gaza to play in the Palestine Youth Orchestra, the conservatory's touring ensemble. A video released in January by a teacher shows the Gaza school in ruins. Now, classes are in tents, or in a bullet-marked classroom of Gaza College.
That report by Reuters. Seven o'clock Central African Time. It is a very good morning to you on this Friday. It's the 15th of August, and welcome to Africa Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, if you've stayed with us, thank you so much for doing that at Channel Africa. And we are live streaming on YouTube at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That's also across all our other media platforms. And then www.channelafrica.co.za is also where you can tune in, as well as the SABC Plus app. My name is Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on this second hour. And we're looking at a number of issues, and one of the big ones for South Africa is the beginning of the national dialogue, and this taking the form of a convention where a lot of what will follow is going to be decided this weekend. And we'll also be looking at climate issues as well. All of that coming up in the next hour or so. But first, let's catch you up with the news with Onere Nsinsi. And that'll be followed by sports headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. A full bench of the High Court in South Africa, Pretoria, will this morning hear the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family's bid for leave to appeal the judgment, declaring the Zambian government was entitled to repatriating the former president's body for a state funeral and burial. Kenny Mapanga reports.
The court based its decision on, among other things, its conclusion that there was an enforceable agreement between the Lungu family and the Zambian government over the repatriation of former President Lungu, as well as the finding that the personal wishes of the Lungu family cannot outweigh the public interest of Zambia and its people. The Lungu family, however, will argue in its bid for leave to appeal to the SCA that the full court made a series of quote-unquote errors in its judgment.
The authorities in Mali say a French national has been arrested. He is suspected of spying for the French army. State television is accused foreign states of trying to destabilize the country. The BBC's David Bamford.
A news bulletin on Mali TV announced the arrest of the French national, who it said had a military background. It showed his picture alongside those of a number of senior Malian army officers arrested in recent days for allegedly planning a coup. Reports suggest more than 50 of them, including 2 generals, have been arrested over the past 2 weeks. Mali's military leader, General Assimi Goïta, has cancelled a planned return to civilian rule and turned away from Mali's former Western partners.
South Africa's Deputy Minister of Social Development, Hanif Hendricks, has called on the interfaith community to support South Africa's national dialogue, which is expected to kick off today. He says the national dialogue will provide people from all walks of life with the opportunity to present their views on how to improve living conditions. Several organizations, including various political parties, have withdrawn from participating in the past few weeks. However, Hendricks says the first meeting will still be able to proceed, as it will mainly focus on logistical arrangements and planning for future dialogues. He was speaking at the G20 Interfaith Forum in Cape Town.
So the call to action is for the interfaith community to throw their weight behind the national dialogue, the first national convention, and to create excitement for the second national convention that will take place in 2026.
South African journalist Deshni Subramani says the gathering of journalists outside news agency Al Jazeera's offices in Johannesburg is unprecedented, noting that journalists usually cover matches and not participate in them. South African journalists staged a demonstration last night to show solidarity with their counterparts in Palestine. This follows an Israeli airstrike last Wednesday that killed 6 reporters, including Al Jazeera correspondent Anas Al-Sharif and Mohammed Qayyike. Subramani says more journalists have died since October 2023 than in any previous wars in the region.
I mean, at the vigil, we also highlighted, since October 2023, more journalists have died than in any of the wars combined. This includes World War I, World War II, it includes Vietnam, every war that we have heard of, all the journalists combined. There's been more journalists dead now in the last 22 months. And that should actually make people feel really, really afraid, because there's a lot happening.
Lastly, the US President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about the possibility of peace between Russia and Ukraine. This as he prepares to meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska today. Trump says he believes Putin is ready for peace. Meanwhile, Putin has praised Trump, saying he is making sincere efforts to end the war. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg.
It is possible, though by no means certain, that offers of economic cooperation from America may persuade the Kremlin to offer concessions on Ukraine. Whether or not that happens, Vladimir Putin has already got one thing he wanted, a high-profile summit and the chance to negotiate one-on-one with an American president.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Bafana to face off with Niger for a place in the quarterfinals of the Chan tournament, while Coco Gauff is into the last 8 at the Cincinnati Open. I'll have details on these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Now, South Africa's presidency has confirmed that the highly anticipated National Convention will proceed in Pretoria today, regardless of whether former President Thabo Mbeki, his foundation, and 6 other prominent foundations take part. The group, which includes the Steve Biko Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, and the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, have criticized what they call inadequate preparation and a rushed timeline for the 2-day gathering. President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to officially open the convention later today. Ntebo Mukhobo has more.
Despite having called for the national dialogue and pledging their participation in its preparatory meetings, the 7 foundations of eminent leaders, including some former presidents, have walked out of today's preparatory gathering, the National Convention. But presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says this foundation represents no constituency, insisting the meeting will go without them.
With all due respect, these foundations do not represent the majority of South Africans. They were never set up to be constituency groups, as far as we understand them, unless that has changed. They do not represent any particular constituency. We now are sitting close to 1,000 confirmed delegates. And so the convention will be representative of all sectors of our society. The credibility of the national dialogue is going to be the level of participation across communities. And that credibility cannot be determined by one person, neither can it be determined by 7 foundations. South Africa is much bigger than any one individual or any other foundations.
He said it would have been good to have former President Thabo Mbeki at the meeting, as he has been at the forefront of calling for the national dialogue. Magwenya has expressed the hope that Mbeki and this foundation might join them later.
It would have been great to have the former president there, but if he's not there, he's not there. The reality is that the show will go on and South Africans will continue with the dialogue process, and hopefully at some point, not only the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, but other foundations will find it amongst themselves to participate in the process and realize that there is no benefit out of boycotting the people of South Africa. They're not boycotting the president, they're not boycotting government, they're boycotting the people of South Africa in their exercise. And therefore, those who choose not to participate are not in any shape or form disadvantaging the president in any way, or government for that matter.
On the latest remarks by SNADF Chief General Rudzane Maphanya during his visit to Iran, where he reportedly expressed complete political solidarity with Tehran, Magwenya says senior military officers do not engage outside of their military purview and that they do not represent the country on foreign policy matters, neither are they delegated to perform such functions.
The general's travel approval starts and ends with the minister. As much as the president is the appointing authority and the commander-in-chief, he does not get involved in supervising the general's travel. So the president did not know. There is a concern. At this period of heightened geopolitical tension, as well as conflict in the Middle East, one can say the visit was ill-advised. And more so, the expectation is that the general should have been a lot more circumspect with the comments he makes. which delve into the area of foreign policy that only the President as well as the Department of International Relations are responsible for.
But the presidential spokesperson insists that although they take a dim view on Mapanya's remarks, his visit to Iran accordingly was not to be authorized by the president, but by his immediate boss, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. I am Tebo Mokobe in Johannesburg.
She builds, she leads, she rises. This August, join Channel Africa in celebrating the women who shape our communities, shift narratives, and carve out a future on their own terms.
These women together ought to be able to turn it right again.
From Cape Town to Kigali, Lagos to Lusaka, African women are rewriting the script. Here's to courage, creativity, and unstoppable progress. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Just gone 11 minutes past 7 Central African Time. Let's take a look at this story now, where the Western Cape High Court in South Africa has overturned an environmental permit that allowed offshore drilling in Block 5, 6 and 7 along the southwest coast. The ruling came after a legal challenge by human and environmental rights groups Green Connection and Natural Justice that exposed serious flaws in the environmental and social assessments for the project. The court has sent the matter back to the authorities, requiring fresh studies, public participation, and greater transparency. Neville van Rooy, head of the Community Outreach Program at Green Connection, joins us now to explain what this judgment means for coastal communities and the environment. Neville, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thanks. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks so much for your time. The Western Cape High Court has just rescinded the Total Energies environmental approval for offshore exploration. In plain terms, how big of a deal is this for South Africa's coasts?
Yeah, thank you very much once again, and good day to the listeners again. We have been fighting for our rights to a clean and healthy ocean, to make sure that ordinary people's voices are heard and marginalized communities' right to their local economy is protected, as well as our oceans protected. So this is a very big deal for the voices of the local people to be protected, as well as the voices of our marginalized communities.
What was the motivation initially from the Total Energies side to explore offshore drilling in this particular area?
The motivation for them was to look at drilling as much as five holes in this particular area, and they were just behind pushing their profits in this area, and also just not to take into account the climate that is changing, and also what a oil spill could possibly done was not even communicated to the ordinary communities as well. And this was a big issue for us when information is not open to the public as well. And so an oil spill would have devastating effects for the local economy, especially the marginalized communities who are dependent on the ocean in that area.
The court mentioned that the companies didn't properly assess the potential socio-economic impacts or climate change risks. From where you stand, how serious are these oversights, as well as the ones you mentioned?
Yeah, when we're talking about climate, we're already thinking about the extractive activity, immediate extractive activity, and then also in terms of long term, you're talking about more carbon emissions.
Mm.
And South Africa is a signatory to the Paris Agreement, and we need to make decisions to take us away, from more fossil fuel expansion in our oceans and in our continent as a whole. But we are disappointed that our government keep on pushing these new deals in our oceans and areas as well. And also, we are very much also concerned what this oil spill that we were hidden information that were hidden from us could also do to the neighboring countries that could also have devastating impacts on them as well. And that is a very big concern for us as well.
Do you think this judgment sends a clear message to oil companies about following the rules, or do you think there's still a long way to go?
We really think that because this is not the first one, it is not the second one that we have been fighting with these multinational companies. We hope that they are trying to get the message. They will try to get a strong message from marginalized communities who have the right to clean oceans, who have the right to, protecting their environment for present and future generations. We hope that they will get the message that our oceans is not for sale. We will not allow our oceans to be looted for more fossil fuels. And it is time for us to move to new and more viable planet-friendly solutions such as renewables. And the time to move to that renewables is now. We can't be still strangled with fossil fuels that is going to be phased out very soon. We need to move to renewables, and we need to do it now. We can't still be strangled with more fossil fuels, and that is also destructive on the planet and the livelihoods of people as well.
Yeah, as we talk about the livelihoods of people, the court also highlighted that communities need to have a say in these types of projects. So how can organizations like yours, Green Connection, make sure that local voices are actually heard?
Yes, that is a very big part of what we stand for. We believe that it's important to amplify the local voices of communities, and we have different formations all around the coast. We have a map that we have all the information of all the applications around the country and in different areas of our country. Be information that's out there for communities to use and community to get involved and make their voices heard. It's important not just on their coasts. The Integrated Coastal Management Act says that the oceans is the property of all South Africans, and all South Africans have the right to have their voices included and their voices amplified and their voices heard, so that we protect our oceans for the present and the future generations, because we have a right to oceans. Oceans is part of our culture. Oceans is part of our food security, and our livelihoods need to be protected for present and future generations. So everyone can get part and take part. You don't necessarily have to stay next to the ocean, but also in other areas, you can also take part into the conversations of making your voice heard as a right to a clean oceans, as many of our cultures is inclusive with our ocean, our clean ocean, in all of our coastal areas.
So Total Energies and Shell are now reviewing the judgment and might submit new assessments. What would you like to see them do differently this time around as they make those new submissions?
We would like to see that they go to communities and hear what the communities want and respect the communities' wishes and respect the communities' alternative that they will present to them, because communities has a particular desire for their own development, and oil and gas is not necessarily the development that communities want. So that needs to be respected, and that needs to be the conversation and dialogue that needs to be had with communities. and that needs to be respected. If the communities want alternative, that alternatives need to be respected and taken heed to. We hope that our companies will come to the party and listen to the voices of the communities on the ground.
Neville, we thank you again for your time, and we appreciate it here at Channel Africa.
Thank you very much. It's lovely chatting to you.
Great stuff, and you have a great weekend. Neville van Rooy is head of the Community Outreach Program at Human and Environmental Rights Group Green Connection, explaining the implications of a court ruling on offshore oil exploration in South Africa.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
So when you think of African music, you think of Kwasa Kwasa, high life music from West Africa, Afrobeat from West Africa, of gospel music or faith music or spiritual music. But when we think of reggae music, we go to the Caribbean, and if it's Africa, we only think about Lucky Dube. Well, I'm here to introduce you to some reggae music from Africa. Salif Keita with Dakan Fair from Mali, and I must say this one was a real shock for me because I never had imagined Salif Keita on a reggae beat, but listening to him, it just proved to me how versatile he is as an artist, because you'd be expecting him to be on that vibe of West Africa, of ballads, but he really proved that he is very versatile, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live 5 days a week.
Now, South Africa is set to kick off a nationwide national dialogue today aimed at uniting citizens, political parties and civil society to tackle some of the country's most pressing challenges. But the process has been beset with snags, with several legacy foundations and political parties withdrawing, citing concerns over government control, credibility. And to help us unpack this and what's happening, we're now joined by our reporter, Dimakatso Lishuro. Dimakatso, thanks very much indeed for joining us. It's still a bit early, but have people started coming through?
Hi, Peter. Unfortunately, I'm still on my way there. I just had to stop on the side of the road to take the call. But I can imagine that a lot of our colleagues have already started arriving there. I wanted to be one of the early ones as well. But we're expecting proceedings to start later on this fall.
All right, so tell us what this national convention is in the scheme of a national dialogue.
As you said, it's they're calling it the kick-starting of the national dialogue, meaning that we're going to have this huge convention here where the civil society, the participants will elect a steering committee to then drive towards the national dialogue, which will take place next year. We're expecting about 1,000 delegates or so who come from all walks of life, from civil society, from government. There seems to be a very heavy contingent from government and business and academics. So it's all sorts of people coming together to select this committee who will then facilitate the talks that are supposed to take place within the 4,300 wards that we have in South Africa to bring the dialogue, if you will, the talks to the local level, to the communities. So this is the kickstarting. They're kickstarting that whole process that will end next year.
All right, so tell us a little bit about who's not coming, because that's been one of the issues that's been in the media quite a bit this week. And what is it that's really bothering them?
Yeah, Peter, that's like a whole story there. It looks like the people who are not coming are overshadowing the whole thing, because yesterday the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, if you recall, Thabo Mbeki was one of the first persons among one of those to call for a national dialogue. And his foundation, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, has been quite involved, along with the legacy foundations that you've mentioned, the Dudu and Desmond, the Desmond and Dudu Leah Foundation, the FW de Klerk Foundation, and the like, Steve Biko. He is now, they're not coming. Obviously, they've said they're withdrawing because they're not happy about the process. They're not happy about the issue of funding because we don't know how much it's not budgeted for. We know that this weekend they're expecting to spend about 8 million, they say, for 2 days. So, that tells you how much this is going to go into by the time we finish this whole thing. Yesterday, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation issued a statement saying that they got an invitation from Makuku Mampuru, who is the executive director of NEDLEC. NEDLEC is funding this weekend. So the budget for this weekend is coming from NEDLEC. And as you know, NEDLEC is funded by the Department of Labour, so it's funded by government. And he's saying that, this is not even the kickstart of the National Convention. He doesn't know what they're intending to do. He's not interested in coming. The letter is quite scathing, Peter, of the process up to so far. They're saying that the people who organizing, they call themselves the National Convention Organizing Committee. They're saying there's no structure like that. So they are saying a whole lot of things that make you see that there's a whole lot of fighting behind the scenes. It's now obviously in the public domain, but it's not clear what the fighting is about. But it seems to be that they are unhappy about government now taking control of this dialogue, which was meant to be driven by the citizens. And part of the criticism or concerns, if you will, is that because there are local elections next year, the ANC may use this dialogue as an electioneering tool, but using state funds, like covertly canvassing for votes using the dialogue. So they're worried about the control of government, the involvement of government in this, and the fact that there is no budget that is set. We've heard about 700 million. We've heard the president saying they're not happy about that amount, that is too high. But at this stage, even the president has not said how much of their budget will go into this, because they said that part of it will come from them, part of it will come from NEDLEC, so they will show that 60% of the budget, 40% from donations. We don't know who those people are. We know UNISA is donating with their venue, so they're not donating in monetary form, but they're providing venue. And Peter also consider that Thabo Mbeki is leaving UNISA, so we're all going there, and the head of the institution or part of the leadership of the institution will not be attending. Quite a big snap.
Of course, yes, he is the Vice Chancellor, isn't he? Yeah, and it is a difficult one. Have you had sight of the program? What's going to happen today, day one?
We've been asking, even yesterday when we went to pick up accreditation, asking for programming, nothing. This morning we got a WhatsApp at 2 in the morning that the president will be delivering a keynote address. So at least we know that there'll be a keynote address there. But in terms of what's to unfold, till now, at this point, I'm speaking to you, I don't have the program. We've requested from GCIS, we've requested from the people at the national, the actual organizers. There is no program that is set yet. So I guess it's a sort of wait and see and see things as they come along. Hopefully, when we get there, we'll get a clearer picture of what time the president will speak and what is going to happen and when. And we can at least better inform our listeners. But at this point, we don't have one.
For our listeners across the continent who may be wondering, locally, do we know if South Africans in general are interested in this process, that are paying attention? Has there been much talk about it on social media?
Well, what's been there is actually just questions that people don't understand why there is a need for a dialogue. And also, the amounts that are meant to go into that. People, as you can imagine, are very wary of these, conventions, conferences seen as just talk shops. And because we've seen so many protests. I mean, yesterday we were looking at the huge protests in Soweto. It's not just those, but there've been protests around the country. There've been unhappiness. There's been an issue of clinics, foreign nationals, being barred access to healthcare facilities. There's issue of jobs. We've just received the job numbers now. So people are saying that, listen, we know what the issues are. The issues are we don't have jobs. We're concerned about crime. We want the economy to grow. We don't really need to sit down or listen to somebody tell us what is it that should happen. This is very clear. What is it that we want? So there isn't. I mean, there are people who are pushing for it. I mean, you've got one of the chairpersons of the eminent persons, Ruth Meyer, saying that, look, prior to the advent of democracy in South Africa, there were the talks, the Codesa talks, which facilitated that whole transition into democracy. But the question is, are we in that situation at this moment? Because at the moment, the issue is about service delivery. It's about corruption. It's about crime. And it's not clear if we need a dialogue, but there are people who are obviously pushing for this dialogue, and it's you wonder what is it that is going to be achieved. I mean, and that's the point that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation letter was raising yesterday, that we don't even understand what is it that this convention is meant to achieve. Because, as I say, even today, now, we don't even have a program of, outside of electing a steering committee, which we will have to pay to do their work for however many months. We don't know what is it that we are supposed to be doing here. I know that one of the things that they want to achieve from this convention this weekend is what are the focus issues that the dialogue must focus on. So what is it that we are supposed to be talking about, But if you look at all the protests, if you look at the social media, what people have been saying, it's clear what people are unhappy about. It's clear what is it that we need to change to achieve a better South Africa. Peter, we've got the National Development Plan, which had so many goals, and we are at no risk of achieving any of those. The Commission has said itself that we're not going to achieve those. So government has changed now from the National Development Plan. Now they've come up with a medium-term plan. So, there's so many talks about talks. We don't know even what the outcomes of these talks are gonna. Are they gonna result in policy? Are they gonna result in a change of constitution? If people say, in terms of, for example, this controversial issue of illegal foreign nationals, is government going to do anything about that? We don't know.
Demakatso, we're going to have to leave it there, but no doubt you'll be keeping us informed throughout the course of the day on day one of this national convention. Thanks so much for this first update.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. That's Demakatso Leshuro, one of our reporters there, on her way to the national convention, which is taking place at the University of South Africa in Pretoria, the capital city of the country. It's a little after 7:30. It's time for your news headlines with Onelen Sinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. A full bench of the High Court in South Africa will this morning hear the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family's bid for leave to appeal the judgment that declared the Zambian government was entitled to repatriating the former president's body for a state funeral and burial. The authorities in Mali say a French national suspected of spying for the French army has been arrested. And the South African journalist Deshni Subramani says the gathering of journalists outside news agency Al Jazeera's offices in Johannesburg is unprecedented. South African journalists staged a demonstration last night to show solidarity with their counterparts in Palestine. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in now with Musibudi Makura as she gives us the latest in the world of sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Well, South Africa's coach, Molefenseki, and his Chargers are bracing for a tough match when they face off with Niger in a must-win African Nations Championship group clash at the Mandela National Stadium in Kampala, Uganda tonight. So the South Africans are third on Group C standings with about 4 points from 2 matches and are 2 points behind the leaders Uganda, who have already played 3 games. Coach Molefenseki's Chargers will be seeking maximum points if they are to ensure that they remain in control of their destiny as the group stages near their conclusion. Meanwhile, second-placed Algeria will face off with Guinea in the other Group C match that could give South Africa an idea of what they need to do later in the evening when that match kicks off at 7 p.m. Central African time. In cricket news now, the Proteas batter Tristan Stubbs has made it clear that they'll go for the jugular when they face off with Australia in the third and final T20 International tomorrow. South Africa beat the home side by a comprehensive 53 runs in the second match on Tuesday, levelling the series at 1-1 and setting up what is effectively then a mouth-watering final this weekend. Stubbs says winning a series against Australia in their own backyard would mean a lot to the team.
I'm really excited. After the first one, it's really important to bounce back, and it sets up well for a series decider tomorrow or Saturday. I mean, for us, we're a young side, to win a series here in Australia will be really cool for us and take momentum. We go straight to England after this, so I think that's the big goal right now, to win Saturday's game.
Meanwhile, the first 2 games were played in Darwin, while the third T20 match will be played in Cairns. Stubbs noted the climate changes in the new city and expects that to play a part in the match tomorrow.
I'm really excited. After the first one, it's really important to bounce back, and it sets up well for a series decider tomorrow or Saturday. I mean, for us, we're a young side, to win a series here in Australia will be really cool for us and take momentum. We go straight to England after this, so I think that's the big goal right now, to win Saturday's game.
On to tennis news now. Defending champion Yannick Sinner swept past Felix Auger-Aliassime 6-love and 6-2 on Thursday to reach the Cincinnati semi-finals, with the world number 1 extending his hard-court winning streak to 25 matches. Now, Sinner delivered a dominant performance, capitalizing on his opponent's 29 unforced errors to claim his first ever win in 3 meetings against the Canadian 23rd seed in just 71 minutes. Now, the 23-year-old Italian became only the 5th man this century to record 25 consecutive victories on the surface, alongside Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, as well as Andy Murray. He will next face French qualifier Terence Atmane, who continued his impressive run by upsetting Danish 7-seed Holger Rune 6-2 and 6-3. Meanwhile, the world number 2 Coco Gauff beat Lucia Bronzetti 6-2 and 6-4 to book her place in the quarterfinals of the Cincinnati Open. The 2 players had progressed to the last 16 in contrasting ways, with Gauff having won only her match in straight sets before a walkover against Dana Jaskremska in the last round. Now, Bronzetti, on the other hand, had come through 3 sets in her previous 3 rounds, and the world number 61 quickly found herself 3-love down. Gauff was broken in the 5th game, but it proved a brief blip as she went on to win the opening set in just 33 minutes. The American went 2-love into the second set, but suffered another lapse when she was broken by love by the Italian in the 3rd game. So Gauff will next face Italy's Yasmin Paolini, who won 6-1 and 6-2 against Barbora Krejcikova of the Czech Republic. This, of course, for place in the semi-final of the Cincinnati Open. It concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with a final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Time now for some business news. Here's Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. CEO of Azule Energy, Adriano Mogini, says the company is considering another gas exploration well after leading the country's first drilling campaign targeting gas and heating success last month. Angola expects gas production to rise more than 20% in the next 5 years as it targets higher exports to Europe and Asia to meet growing domestic demand, while its oil output stagnates despite the country's exiting OPEC. Sub-Saharan Africa's second largest crude producer after Nigeria, Angola is pivoting towards natural gas to help drive an industrialization program based on favorable investment. A South African court has rescinded an environmental authorization granted to Total Energies at its joint venture partner Shell to explore for oil in a block of the Cape Coast. However, the court says Total Energies should be given a chance to rectify deficiencies identified, including a failure to properly assess the potential socio-economic impact of any oil spills or take climate change into consideration. The order is the latest in a series of court challenges between environmentalists and oil companies looking to explore along South Africa's coast. In a step aimed towards building stronger collaboration in advancing water security and sustainable sanitation solutions, the Minister of Water and Sanitation in South Africa, Phemi Majodina, and the chairperson of the Association of Water and Sanitation Institutions of South Africa, Ramateu Munyokolo, have signed a memorandum of cooperation at the AU-AIP G20 Water Investment Conference in Cape Town. Minister Majodina says the MOU will benefit all water entities in the country. Apologies for the sound glitch on that story. Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero has confirmed that they have submitted a detailed response to the Finance Minister Inoko Dongwana in relation to his concerns about the city's finances. This comes after Treasury flagged $1.3 billion in unauthorized, irregular and wasteful expenditure in the city's latest financial report. Morero says he has established a disciplinary board to probe allegations of financial misconduct in the city. He addressed the media yesterday. China's factory output growth slumped to an 8-month low in July, while retail sales slowed sharply, raising pressure on policymakers to roll out more stimulus and revive domestic demand and ward off external shocks to the $19 trillion economy. The underwhelming indicators came as officials navigate pressure on multiple fronts, ranging from U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies to extreme weather, excessive competition in the domestic market, and chronic weakness in the property sector. Industrial output grew 5.7% year-on-year in July. Now let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 532. Botswana 13 pula 26. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 412. Zambia 23 kwacha 10. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40. Russia 79 rubles 64, India 87 rupee 57, China 71.17, South Africa 17 rand 56 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,340, platinum at $1,351 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $66.72 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
She builds, she leads, she rises. This August, join Channel Africa in celebrating the women who shape our communities, shift narratives, and carve out a future on their own terms.
These women together ought to be able to turn it right again.
From Cape Town to Kigali, Lagos to Lusaka, African women are rewriting the script. Here's to courage, creativity, and unstoppable progress. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, the SABC, is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform on our website, that's www.sabc.co.za, and click under e-tenders, or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Economist Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko has warned that the United States' reciprocal tariffs, some reaching 50% on imports from over 90 countries, are deepening economic insecurity and putting jobs at risk across the global south. Speaking exclusively to Channel Africa's reporter Innocent Samosa ahead of the workshop at Stellenbosch Business School today, Dr. Moleko said that the event will unveil findings from a joint Ghana-South Africa research project titled Gendered Aspects of Economic Security, along with key policy recommendations aimed at addressing these challenges.
Why are women in particular affected is because the composition of the structure of the economy is that women are mainly concentrated in vulnerable sectors. These sectors are sectors that are going to be impacted by some of the trade tariffs. Of course, different countries have to look at the structure of the economy as to where are women located in the economy. And we know in South Africa, for an example, women are mainly where there's labor intensivity. Women are mainly in sectors, primary sectors, where there's low level of skill and the informality is higher. Women are concentrated also in the informal economy. So they make a large portion of subsistence farming, smallholder farming, informal trading, trade in terms of the different, even in the retail, informal retail trade. And so higher tariffs are going to hit women harder because they dominate sectors that are sensitive to changes in the export market.
So you spoke about different sectors that will be impacted by this. And the question then is, what policy changes are urgently needed to address employment and social protections for workers in the face of growing trade and labor market that is very much volatile?
So I think that you have to look at, firstly, policy that looks at the hardest hit. So your exporters have to then be protected from the unintended consequence, your informal traders, and those who are in the seasonal work, particularly in female-dominated sectors like agriculture or your subsistence agriculture. So what policies can you put in place there? So the first thing is for exporters, we have to look at incentives that make our cost of doing business lower. Subsidies. You have to incentivize exporters to look and diversify for other markets. I think from a trade policy perspective, outside of the global north, specifically the American markets, I think the aggressive diversification of, markets in the first world, so the Japanese, you've got the Indian economies, you've got the Chinese economies. Are we able to ensure that these deficits that we're going to experience because of the smaller output or the smaller demand from these other markets that will see higher prices because of the direct effect of the tariffs? How are we able to support smaller producers, exporters in particular?
Just before I let you go, can you explain the significance of the new employment and income security index developed through your research and how it could influence policy across sub-Saharan Africa?
So what is this index? Basically, the index is used to investigate the impact of employment security on the gender wage gap. So it's both in South Africa and in Ghana. So what do you look at? So when you look at aspects of employment security, you look at critical aspects for, is there labor market stability? Are people arbitrarily dismissed? Do they have access to long-term employment contracts, right? And I think the last aspect within looking at employment security index is, one of the compositions is, what is the level of casualization of work? So the relevance of the index, therefore, it plays a role in telling us the dimensions of employment security, tells us what are the levels of employment security between genders.
That was the economist Dr. Ntabiseng Moleko speaking to Channel Africa economics reporter Innocent Simosa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As Africa edges closer to hosting one of the biggest clean energy gatherings, the spotlight turns to the role green hydrogen could play in transforming heavy industries like steel, cement and chemicals. From 9 to 11 September of 2025, the Global African Hydrogen Summit in Windhoek, Namibia, will bring together global leaders, policy makers and investors to unlock bankable projects and position Africa to be at the forefront of the green industrial revolution. We speak now to Tiago Marquez, Head of Content Africa at DMG Events, as the countdown to the summit begins. Tiago, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this Friday?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
And we appreciate your time. What is green hydrogen, first of all? Let's start there. And what role can it play in creating a positive change for our climate?
So green hydrogen is a new source of energy. And at the moment, a lot of countries in Africa are really looking into this innovative form of energy to decarbonize, but also to create new industries within their own economies. Hydrogen is being adopted globally, so it's not only a new source of energy in the African continent, and we see a lot of collaboration and cooperation across the different continents, not only Africa, but also Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So it's very, very exciting, and we're going to do the event and having participation from stakeholders from all around the world. So really think through collaboration, having these discussions. On site in Namibia, we'll be able to help all the countries from around the continent to really adopt these new technologies.
What can attendees expect from this year's program? It's just weeks to go before the Global African Hydrogen Summit.
So we have 3 days of not only discussions, we have also project investment roundtables. We have a lot of masterclasses, workshops, and practical discussions. We'll be having the participation from delegations from China. We have delegations from Japan, from Europe, from the European Union, and also from all around Africa. So we really believe that it's through collaboration and cooperation that the adoption of hydrogen as a critical source of green and clean energy can be
Heavy industries like steel, cement, and chemicals are some of the hardest to decarbonize. How will this summit address their specific challenges as well as opportunities? Tiago, are you still there? I think we've lost him on the line there. Heard the phone cut. We're in conversation on this Friday morning with Tiago Marquez, who's head of Content Africa at DMG Events. They are hosting the Global African Hydrogen Summit, and this is to take place from the 9th to 11 September of this year, looking at how we can change our companies, big companies, corporates in the spaces of steel, cement, and chemicals to become more climate aware and go greener in terms of the carbon emissions by moving towards green hydrogen. Of course, before using grey hydrogen was the norm, but now there's a shift, and Africa also needs to catch up with those big global players. Tiago, having mentioned the companies in the countries in the European Union as well as Asia markets who have taken the lead on this. So we'll continue that chat as we try to get a hold of Tiago again on the line.
She builds, she leads, she rises. This August, join Channel Africa in celebrating the women who shape our communities, shift narratives, and carve out a future on their own terms.
These women together ought to be able to turn it right again.
From Cape Town to Kigali, Lagos to Lusaka, African women are rewriting the script. Here's to courage, creativity, and unstoppable progress. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's continue then our chat now with Tiago Marquez, head of Content Africa at DMG Events, as they prepare to host the Global African Hydrogen Summit. Tiago, we got cut off there, I'm not sure how, but my previous question was on how this summit can help to address the specific challenges around the industries of steel, cement, and chemicals being able to decarbonize. They are facing challenges when it comes to this. How will the summit help them? Tiago, can you hear me? All right, I think we are going to try, I don't know if in the next hour we'll have time to speak to Tiago on this chat. It doesn't look like we're winning there. And we've got a few minutes to get to, before we get to the top of the hour, about 3 minutes. So this Global African Hydrogen Summit is also putting Namibia at the forefront. I know Tiago had cited some global leaders when it comes to the shift from grey hydrogen to green hydrogen. But on the continent, Namibia has positioned itself as a leader in this green hydrogen for that. And you know, we can also look at what makes this country well suited for this role, but also other infrastructure projects that have been launched on the continent that we've spoken about, where countries on the continent are becoming very much aware of the importance of the shift from grey hydrogen to green hydrogen, and the lessons, I guess, and motivations that Africa can extract from countries like China, India, Australia, and Saudi Arabia, who are leading this cause.
So today in history, you know I like to do that. Something really interesting happened today, and I'm also kind of thinking, as we're looking at this national dialogue, somebody did something quite remarkable in 1995. And that is a year into full democracy. A gentleman by the name of Nelson Mandela visited Betsy Verwoerd. Now, this was seen as a powerful gesture of reconciliation. President Mandela visited Mrs. Verwoerd, who was the widow of the former apartheid activist, architect Hendrik Verwoerd, at her home in Oranje. And the event was widely seen as being a symbolic act of healing and bridge building in post-apartheid South Africa. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that Madiba did very early in South Africa's new dispensation, where he and some people didn't appreciate it actually, where he really wanted to embrace everybody and bring everybody to this rainbow nation. And so, yeah, this is what he did in 1995.
We wonder if that can be reciprocated this time around. We'll see. O'clock Central African time it is. We now enter the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. We are Channel Africa. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across the social media platforms of YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. So do get in touch with us with your questions and comments about our programming. And we are on the SABC Plus app, as well as www.channelafrica.co.za. Happy Friday. My name is Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Yeah, we still got quite a lot that we're going to be unpacking in this hour. The National Convention leading to the National Dialogue is taking with Onele Nsinsi, and the sports headlines with Musubudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. A full bench of the High Court in South Africa, Pretoria, will this morning hear the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family's bid for leave to appeal the judgment that declared the Zambian government was entitled to repatriating the former Zambian president's body for a state funeral and burial. Kenny Mapanga has more.
The court based its decision on, among other things, its conclusion that there was an enforceable agreement between the Lungu family and the Zambian government over the repatriation of former President Lungu, as well as the finding that the personal wishes of the Lungu family cannot outweigh the public interest of Zambia and its people. The Lungu family, however, will argue in its bid for leave to appeal to the SCA that the full court made a series of quote-unquote errors in its judgment.
Authorities in Mali say a French national has been arrested. He is suspected of spying for the French army. State television has accused foreign states of trying to destabilize the country. The BBC's David Bamford.
A news bulletin on Mali TV announced the arrest of the French national, who it said had a military background. It showed his picture alongside those of a number of senior Malian army officers arrested in recent days for allegedly planning a coup. Reports suggest more than 50 of them, including 2, have been arrested over the past 2 weeks. Mali's military leader, General Assimi Goïta, has...
Keike Subramani says more journalists have died since October 2023 than in any previous war in the region.
I mean, at the vigil, we also highlighted, since October 2023, more journalists have died than in any of the wars combined. This includes World War I, World War II, it includes Vietnam, every war that we have heard of, all the journalists combined. There's been more journalists dead now in the last 22 months. And that should actually make people feel really, really afraid, because there's a lot happening.
Lastly, the US President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about the possibility of peace between Russia and Ukraine. This says he prepares to meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska today. Trump says he believes Putin is ready for peace. Meanwhile, Putin has praised Trump, saying he's making sincere efforts to end the war. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg.
It is possible, though by no means certain, that offers of economic cooperation from America may persuade the Kremlin to offer concessions on Ukraine. Whether or not that happens, Vladimir Putin has already got one thing he wanted: a high-profile summit and the chance to negotiate one-on-one with an American president.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Morocco reignited Chan campaign with a clinical 3-1 victory over Zambia last night, while Yannick Sinner makes the quarterfinals of the Cincinnati Open. Details of these and other stories coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, today we're focusing quite a bit on the national dialogue in South Africa, which is unfolding. A month ago, President Cyril Ramaphosa decided that the nation needed to understand its socio-economic ills, and to do that, there needed to be a national meeting. He went ahead and put together a 31-member eminent persons group that would lead the convention. What follows has been a bit of a pushback. The nation divided on whether it needed a meeting or a solution. Some accusing the president of putting the cart before the horse, and others shocked by the cost. Now, some of the legacy foundations withdrawing from the dialogue, and opposition political parties accusing President Ramaphosa of playing politics ahead of the 2026 local government elections. Nonetheless, the first national convention is happening today, and to discuss this further, we're now joined by a former politician and diplomat. He's the leader of the Democratic Alliance Party at one stage, and also served as South Africa's ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay. Ambassador Tony Leon, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. Good morning, and to the listeners and viewers.
All right, so let's start with this interesting piece that you wrote, and you called it, this national dialogue, a costly illusion. Take me through what you mean by that.
Well, let me just preface my remarks by saying, we shouldn't prepare for every contingency except success. So if against expectation, mine and others, this national dialogue actually produces some worthwhile, actionable, I need to stress that adverb, actionable plans that can get the country out of the rut it's in, then, I would be in support of it. But I must say, the impression I have, and it's obviously an impression because we haven't even started the first meeting yet, is that this is an enormously expensive talk shop exercise, which in many ways, whatever its merits and whatever alternative to what the government should be doing, which is to govern the country in terms of the mandate that the governing parties received at the election last May. That's the purpose of having a government and people voting for a government or voting against a government. So we now have a very expensive parliament in South Africa. It's got 490 members. We've got hundreds of provincial legislators. We've got thousands of municipal councillors. And I think, the taxpayer, overburdened as he and she might be, would be forgiven for thinking, well, why do we have all these well-paid legislators at all three levels of government if they, in fact, can't conduct the national or the local conversation in place of some kind of rather amorphous citizens' body or many bodies which will do it? I could just add as well, without getting too much into the weeds of the thing, that as you would know, Peter, part of our municipal legislative infrastructure provides for so-called ward committees. So in the thousands of municipal wards from which municipal councillors across the country are elected, actually have citizens committees that are meant to deal with problems on a day-to-day or monthly basis. So then you've got to say, superimposed on top of all this is now a national dialogue, which I'm all in favor of people having discussions and coming up with plans. That's fine. That's part of the democratic discourse. But is this a substitute for government? Is it complementary to the government doing its job? And you would know, and I guess many of the listeners will, that just this week, or in the last few weeks, but this week particularly, we've got an extraordinary lapse of government. We've got the chief of the defense force goes off to Iran, apparently on an unsanctioned trip. imperiled South Africa's very fraught relationship with the United States with his remarks. Whether they were approved or disapproved by his political chief, we have no idea. We've got a provincial police commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal, one of the most important provinces, who basically alleges that his own minister and various high-ups in the police force are in collusion with criminal entities. We've got taxi mafias, we've got construction mafias, we've got a serious academic saying South Africa's a mafia state. So you would think, whether these criticisms or observations are valid or invalid, that government's job is to address these things instead of having a very expensive national conversation about things that we already know or on plain sight. So that's, where I come from. And I'm very happy to be proved wrong in all these observations, that somehow out of this process or processes, we will emerge, like the chrysalis and the butterfly, with something that really is going to be impressive and actionable.
Having been in politics at a critical time in South Africa's history, you would have been part of and seen national conversations in the past geared towards building the country and a new dispensation. I'm just wondering, is there anything different about this one, or could there have been lessons learned in preparing for this one from what we did in the past?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, Peter. So let me just start by saying that even if you are a huge supporter, cheerleader for this national dialogue, you would have thought that some of the founding spirits of it, who come from the age you were describing, like Thabo Mbeki, the former president, and these so-called legacy foundations, who've expressed, well, actually are boycotting the opening national convention today, that their views would have weighed on the organizers of the national dialogue. In other words, there was a clear push not to proceed today and tomorrow, but to delay matters until all the objections and objectives had been better finessed, and that didn't happen. So I think the rush to have this conversation starting today, instead of in a few weeks' time when you might have been able to meet some of these objectives and objections, would have been more prudent. But that is not the course followed by the presidency or the group who are organizing it. But going back to where your question's located, in the previous national conversations, if you look at some of the language and the imaging around this current national dialogue, you'll see we've borrowed and transposed a lot of the nomenclature from the constitutional dialogue and, in fact, negotiations we had in South Africa, really on and off between 1991 and 1996, when we finalized the current constitution of South Africa in May 1996 in Parliament. Now, I think that the big difference between then and now, to go to your question, was that in 1991, after F.W. de Klerk, then the president, unbanned the ANC and inaugurated the negotiations process through the CODESA, Convention for a Democratic South Africa, the majority of South Africans did not have the vote. They were excluded from the formal structures of state power. The monopoly of political power was then held by the white minority and coloureds and Indians to a lesser extent through a tricameral parliament. So how were you going to bridge this gap between those who had the formal political power and those who had the mass power? And so CODESA was created as a means of bringing the system and the struggle together under one roof. And, with a lot of interruptions and false starts, it did achieve its objective. But that was because we had an unusual situation where there was a difference between the real power, which was in the masses, and the formal power, which was in a government that only represented a minority. And that's why we had the convention then, the CODESA convention. But now, of course, as I mentioned, in response to your first question, you've actually got power formalized in the parliament and the legislatures and the provincial governments of South Africa, where everyone has a vote and every voice, theoretically at least, is heard. So I think that is the big difference, that it was absolutely previously necessitated by the absence of structures in which people could participate. Now you've got all the structures in which everyone can participate, and still we find ourselves back having this national conversation. You could say, of course, and I guess the organizers will say this, that there are big weaknesses in our system, and that is quite clear. If you look at the minority of people who actually voted in the last year's general election, if you exclude those who didn't register to vote and the big minority who stayed away, most eligible voters in South Africa did not participate in last year's general election, which means a lot of people sit or stand outside the system. And if the national dialogue can actually bring these people back into the system, then good. But, I remain somewhat skeptical for the reasons I alluded to in my earlier reply.
I am a little curious about what should be talked about at a national conversation like this. And I think you might have given us some clues now in the last part of this answer. So we know the issues: crime, unemployment, economics, you name it. I think everybody understands and knows that those things need to be fixed. But at the heart of all of this, and you started talking about it earlier, is the doing, the governing. And maybe the issue is how we choose the people who do the governing. And I wonder if that isn't what should be top of the list of a conversation like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I think there are a lot of things. People, talk is, as they say in the classics, talk is cheap, money buys the whiskey. So, I mean, it's one thing to have a conversation. What are you going to do about it? Now, Peter, I could take your point further and say the one thing South Africa doesn't have a shortage of, or a lack of information, is what its citizens think. We have quite sophisticated polling in this country. We have a lot of pulses taken of national opinion. And a lot of that opinion, let me put it frankly to you, I know this is a channel that goes into Africa, but it doesn't make for that pleasant reading, because I think many South Africans, as is a trend across the world, it's not unique to this country, see it in Europe and America, are very hostile to non-South Africans being in South Africa. So if you were to take a national conversation, you'd probably find there's a big xenophobic element in what people want. I remember when I was in the Constitutional Assembly, which birthed the Constitution of South Africa in 1996, we took the Constitution to the people, very similar to this national dialogue, just cheaper. Well, it was then 34 million rand, this is 700 million rand, but you've got to adjust for inflation over 30 years. And we got an enormous blizzard of public responses. What did people want the Constitution? I'll tell you as a fact that most people, many people, a majority, wanted the death penalty to be in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa because they're worried about crime. Well, crime has risen since then. And I suspect if you took a national majority opinion, most people would say, let's have stronger punishment, let's have better policing. So if you're going to listen to what people want, just be careful, because they might say things that you, the political elite, and at the end of the day, however citizen-friendly this is, that's the elite who make the decisions. It's the elite who form an eminent persons group. It's the elite who are going to write the reports coming out of this national dialogue. So they might not always like what they hear that the people want, because what the people want and what the Constitution allows and what the government's prepared to do are often very different things.
I had a conversation with a commissioner from Ethiopia who's, they're going through a process right now, and they've been at it for about 3 years now, a national dialogue of their own. And he said that when they started, there was a lot of mistrust, there was a lot of people who didn't participate, but after a time, people started to see, okay, there is value, and they joined in. Is there any chance that could happen here?
No, of course, there's a chance. And, as I said, I started as a skeptic, but I'm very happy to be proved wrong. I don't want to be only pessimistic. I just, sound some notes of caution because I've been in this rodeo before in different eras. And I also wonder about its utility in the sense that, look, South Africa, with all its sophistication and all its problems, got both in fair measure, confronts some real crises. Now, I mean, and you mentioned them in the introduction. You mentioned the lack of economic growth, the huge amount of unemployment, corruption metastasized from top to bottom across all levels of government, at the heart of the executive of this country, as we see every day with every revelation. And yet, it's not that people don't know these things. It's not that people haven't expressed themselves against these things or in favor of outcomes that will mitigate this or these crises. We know that. But people want a government which acts on its mandate. And, where I'm perhaps most negative about this national dialogue is, even if they come up with immensely sensible suggestions, a can-do list, how are you going to guarantee that these translate into action? Now, I mean, South Africa has gone through without public participation, but presumably based on what people want, a whole series. We had a national development plan. We had a national planning commission. It was going to put certain things in place to make sure that in 4 years' time, I think, or 5 years' time, 2030 was the outcome. We'd have 5% economic growth. We'd have hugely reduced unemployment. We'd have double the level of investment in the economy. None of these things have happened, even though there are detailed plans to make them happen. So that is why one sounds some notes of caution about what is going to be the actionable outcome of this current exercise or this ongoing exercise.
John Steenhuisen, the Democratic Alliance Party leader, said that this is a stitch-up by President Ramaphosa. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, he sits in Ramaphosa's government, in his cabinet, so he presumably knows far more than I do from the inside. I do find it rather striking. I mean, given that South Africa is a parliamentary democracy and we have this coalition government, that I think the political parties that represent more than half the voters of South Africa are either boycotting this national dialogue or are inactive in it. So you've got the DA, which is the biggest, second biggest party. You've got the MK, you've got the EFF, and you've got various smaller parties who are not attending today. So it already starts off, whether by accident or design or default, as looking more and more something that's crafted in the image of the ANC. And therefore, I guess what Steenhuisen's saying is that Cyril Ramaphosa, the leader of the ANC and the president, is using this to try and bolster the position of the ANC rather than on behalf of the entire public. And that, of course, is perhaps reinforced by the fact that, well, I suppose it has to start from somewhere, is that the driving force of the national dialogue, the operational center, is the office of the president himself. So I think, and you can speak to John Steenhuisen yourself, I'm not a spokesman, that would be where the cynicism of someone like Steenhuisen would arise from. And of course, he has indicated, because of his dissatisfaction with the operation of the government of which he's part, that one of the consequences is that his party is not participating in this. But I mean, there's another party, the Freedom Front, which is in the government, is not participating. And as I say, the major opposition parties outside of government, the MK and the EFF, aren't in it either. So it does start with a structural problem. And, once again, going back to what we discussed earlier in the program, if somehow Deus e Mirabilis, we actually emerge from this with something that really does look like it's got momentum, I guess parties might reconsider as they go along. But I think, the onus will be on the national dialogue and its organizers to actually prove that this is something beyond the talk shop, which John Steenhuisen labeled it as. or national monologue, I think was the word he used, rather than dialogue.
What could be the consequences of this thing failing completely and not delivering anything?
Well, I think, Peter, if that is the fact, it'll just reinforce people's cynicism about a lot of what's gone wrong here at the moment, or is going wrong. And I think just more people will opt out of the constitutional political system, which of course is dangerous because then various unconstitutional and less democratic options perhaps become more attractive.
I was told also by somebody else this week that because we've got such a young population and they're not voting, that maybe this national dialogue really should have been something that happens in a platform that works for them, and that it becomes a hashtag, and that people communicate online rather than sitting at UNISA and having all these eminent people and that kind of thing. I wonder what your thoughts are, because the average age of a citizen now is well below 20, I understand, across the continent now. So it's young people that are most affected and the highest in number. And so whatever's being discussed really should be about them by and large.
Absolutely. Look, I must, put my hand up, but I'm not involved in this. I'm 68 years old, but I'm young by comparison with some of the leadership in South Africa and Africa. I mean, we have a pretty geriatric leadership. The president's well into his 70s. The leader of the third largest party, Jacob Zuma's in his 80s. The man who was the founding spirits of this national dialogue, Thabo Mbeki, who's currently descending from it, is also in his 80s. So this is not this might be a country of young men and women, but its leadership is old. And you've got some extraordinary examples across Africa of truly gerontocratic leadership out of step with what young people aspire to and want. Look, I happened to be in New York City recently in June when the event of the election of the young, in his early 30s, Democratic Socialist Zoran Mondani was won against every expectation the Democratic primary to become mayor of New York City. And one of the reasons he won was that not only is he young and appealed to young people who'd never voted before or hadn't participated in something like a party primary, but he was able, as someone said, he was a digital native. He could use technologies and platforms that older folk have just got no idea of. So while his opponent, Andrew Cuomo, was putting millions of dollars into television adverts, Mundani was using TikTok and Snapchat and putting up vertical videos, and that really galvanized a lot of people. So I think it's not just a question of having attractive young spokesmen who speak to and with some authenticity about young people. It's getting to younger people where they're at, and probably that is on those platforms that older people have no idea of how to operationalize.
We're starting to come to the end of our conversation. I'm just wondering, you were a party leader at a very important time in our country's history. If you were party leader now and in the GNU, what would you be pushing for?
Well, what I'd be pushing for, and I can speak with some direct experience because, as you might know, I was actually one of the negotiators of the GNU last year when it was formed. What I'd be pushing for is to hold the government or the president's feet to the fire on actually operationalizing the agreement that was implemented. I think the problem with one of the reasons why we have a dysfunctional government, where really basically people do what they want. I mean, the chief of the defense force goes off on apparently a rogue mission to Iran. Who knows whether he had permission, didn't have permission, has a script, doesn't have a script. I don't know. But the actual agreement, the so-called statement of intent, that was signed, solemnly signed in the middle of June last year between the ANC and the DA, and then between the ANC and all the other parties in this government, actually has a set of steps that, if they actually executed and operationalized, would actually lead to joined up government. So if I was a party leader in that government, I would insist that we don't have every party for itself, every minister doing their own thing, but we have a joined-up approach to government by instrumentalizing or operationalizing what we agreed to last June. And unfortunately, that agreement has been honored only in its breach. And I think, go back to basics and just say, okay, we're not going any further with this arrangement until we actually implement these steps.
Do you think the GNU will survive?
How long is a piece of string? I don't know. I mean, it stumbles on.
Yeah.
It survives in the sense that it hasn't broken up, which I suppose you could say is something. But in terms of being effective, I mean, just to go back, and I'm sure this is going to come up in this national dialogue, the biggest single propulsive forces that created the spot from the election result was to have higher levels of economic growth and lower levels of unemployment. And frankly, the GNU, on the data that we have, on the lived experience of people, has been a failure in that regard, because we have practically no economic growth, never mind the aggravation of the Trump tariff, which is another conversation, and how ineffectively that has been countered. And we have mountainous unemployment. So in terms of the task that the GNU set itself, it hasn't succeeded. So we can say, well, okay, the GNU continues, and it does. I mean, it's still there, and the parties to it have not yet left it. But that's a very low bar. You've got to say, why are you there, and what have you achieved, is the more germane question, I think.
Ambassador Tony Leon, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us on this day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. That's Ambassador Tony Leon, former diplomat and politician, former head of the Democratic Alliance Party, and also ambassador, a South African ambassador that was posted to South America. Okay, and that's where we'll leave that issue for now, but I'm sure that we'll keep you updated during the course of the day with our various reporters and programs during the course of today and evening. Right now, it's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The presidency in South Africa says the National Convention and National Dialogue will go ahead as planned, despite the withdrawal of several foundations. Last week, several prominent legacy foundations announced their withdrawal from the gathering. A full bench of the High Court in South Africa, Pretoria, will this morning hear the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family's bid for leave to appeal the judgment, declaring the Zambian government was entitled to repatriating the former president's body for a state funeral and burial. And there's been fierce international criticism of Israeli plans to build more than 3,000 homes in a controversial settlement in the occupied West Bank. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now, let's say good morning to Musibudi Makura, who's got our final sports news for Rise and Shine on this Friday.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Indeed, the final sports update on the show this morning will start here. So two-time champions Morocco reignited their African nations CHAN 2024 campaign with a clinical 3-1 victory over Zambia in Nairobi, Kenya last night. So goals from Mohamed Hirmat, Osama Nanoni, as well as Sabri Bougrain secured a Group A victory at the Nile National Stadium, keeping the Atlas Lions quarter-final hopes alive after their debut defeat against the host nation Kenya. So the result now leaves Morocco in a far more stronger position ahead of their final group fixture, while Zambia's third successive loss ends their slim qualification chances. Now, two-time champions, the Democratic Republic of Congo, meanwhile took a huge step towards the quarterfinals of this tournament with a composed 2-0 victory over Angola at the Moi International Sports Centre in Kasarani, Nairobi last night. Well, Bafana coach Ntseki and his Chargers are bracing for a very tough match when they face off with Niger in a must-win African Nations group clash at the Mandela National Stadium in Kampala, Uganda tonight. So the South Africans are third in Group C standings with about 4 points from 2 matches and are 2 points behind the leaders, Uganda, who have already played their third game. So coach Ntseki's Chargers will be seeking maximum points if they are to ensure they remain in control of their destiny as the group stages near to a conclusion. So second placed Algeria will face off with Guinea in the other Group C match. That could also give the South Africans an idea of what they need to do later in the evening to secure that quarter-final berth. Onto this story now, SABC Sport can officially confirm that Mamelodi Sundowns have agreed a permanent transfer deal with Wydad Casablanca for Temonkosi Lodge. Now, the move had been widely speculated following the 32-year-old's impressive loan spell in Morocco, where he featured in the Botala Pro League from January this year and later at the FIFA Club World Cup a month and a half ago. So with the short-term loan expiring, Wydad now took time to finalise the buyout, but sources have told the public broadcaster that an agreement has now been reached, clearing the way for Lodge to return to North Africa and join the Red Castle side. Now, Lodge signed for Sundowns in January of 2024 to reunite with their then coach Rulani Mokoena before linking up with him again in Wydad earlier on this year. In rugby news now, former Springbok captain John Smith reckons this season's rugby championship could be tougher based purely on the fact that South Africa have had to travel away to face New Zealand. Now, the Southern Hemisphere Rugby Union competition kicks off tomorrow with the Boks hosting Australia at Ellis Park Stadium in Johannesburg before Argentina facing over the All Blacks in Cordoba. Now, Smith, a 2-time Tri-Nations winning captain, believes hosting the Wallabies as well as visiting the Kiwis this year could prove more challenging than it has been for the Springboks in recent history when it comes to the rugby championship.
So rugby championship is always a big part of the influence of a championship is who you face at home, and so I think it's always easier when you're facing the All Blacks at home, and so this year we've got them away twice. I think the good news is that we've got the start to our championship is at home against Australia, and again we've got an Australian team that's come off 3 really tough tests and have actually been really competitive. The margins were small. Actually, a series that probably could have pulled off as well.
And finally, in swimming news, Michael Phelps has launched a scathing attack on U.S. swimming leadership, with the 23-time Olympic gold medalist branding the body weak and demanding sweeping reforms after what he sees as years of organizational decline. Now, the 40-year-old American, the most decorated Olympian of all time with 28 medals, delivered his analysis while revealing he might also not want his 4-year son competing in the sport given the current state of swimming in the USA. So Phelps traced his frustration back through his competitive career, saying he often felt that his voice went unheard and was told to be grateful for the chance to compete and that it was more important to stay quiet and to keep the peace. Well, that is a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the On The Move team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's get business from an African perspective as we say good morning to Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. CEO of Azule Energy, Adriano Mogini, says the company is considering another gas exploration well after leading the country's first drilling campaign targeting gas and heating success last month. Angola expects gas production to rise more than 20% in the next 5 years as it targets higher exports to Europe and Asia and to meet growing domestic demand, while its oil output stagnates despite the country exiting OPEC. Sub-Saharan Africa's second largest crude oil producer after Nigeria, Angola is pivoting towards natural gas to help drive an industrialization program based on favorable investment. It has steps aimed at building stronger collaboration in advancing water security and sustainable sanitation solutions. The Minister of Water and Sanitation in South Africa, Phemima Jordina, and the chairperson of the Association of Water and Sanitation Institutions of South Africa, Ramateo Munyokolo, have signed a memorandum of cooperation at the AU-AIP G20 Water Investment Conference in Cape Town. Minister Majordina says the MOU will benefit all water entities in the country.
With municipalities, they buy water from us, sell water to municipalities and other water users. So we want to work together with them because they are not funded by government. All the water entities are zero funded by government, but they are regulated by government. So we must allow them wings to stretch. They must go out to markets, financial markets, to raise funds. But as they do that, they must purify water. So this commitment is that when we give them bulk water supply, they will give that bulk water supply to municipalities.
Johannesburg Mayor Dada Murero has confirmed that they have submitted a detailed response to the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana in relation to his concerns about the city's finances. This comes after Treasury flagged $1.3 billion in unauthorized, irregular and wasteful expenditure in the city's latest financial report. Murero says he has established a disciplinary board to probe allegations of financial misconduct in the city. He addressed the media in Johannesburg yesterday.
The 23.6 billion in unauthorized, irregular and fruitless expenditure is a cumulative figure that has progressively increased in the city's financial statements over the years. During this time, the expenditures were largely unaddressed and not regularized as required by the FMMA. The 23.6 billion comprises the following: 13 billion is about 55% in unauthorized expenditure.
Stocks in Asia made an uneven recovery as traders assessed the policy options facing the world's central banks after an unexpected spike in the producer price data in the U.S. renewed inflation concerns. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan was down 0.2% after a report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which shows the producer price index increased 0.9% in July on a month-on-month basis, well above economists' expectations. China's factory output growth slumped to an 8-month low in July, while retail sales slowed sharply, raising pressure on policymakers to roll out more stimulus to revive domestic demand and ward off external shocks to the $19 trillion economy. The underwhelming indicators come as officials navigate pressure on multiple fronts, ranging from U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies to extreme weather, excessive competition in the domestic market and chronic weakness in the property sector. Industrial output grew 5.7% year-on-year in July. Let's look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 532. In Botswana, 13.26. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 412. Zambia, 23 kwacha 10. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40. Russia, 79 rubles 64. India is 87 rupee 57. China, 71.17. South Africa, 17 rand 56 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound, 85 to the euro. Taking a look at commodities, gold is at $3,343, platinum at $1,355 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $66.62 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não...
Or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Friday, so this is the part of the show on Fridays on Rise and Shine, where we bring you news in the space of arts and lifestyle. And our producer and a reporter, Tlabatlangu, goes out and about to compile this for us. So let's take a listen as to what she has for us on this 15th of August.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, the African Perspective. I am Ndlandla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, the 5th edition of the South African Local Fashion Police launched an event celebrating women continues. The 5th edition of the proudly South African Local Fashion Police initiative was recently launched with a media event aboard the Blue Train. This initiative aimed at promoting,
because it is our livelihood. That's what we do as South Africans. We need to get an income from what is being generated from South Africa. So this initiative really strikes home for us, because the proudly South African story has had an impact on our brand with other inferior duplicates. So it's about time people got to understand that as designers, we are embracing that. As creatives, we are for that. And we just want to show the world that we are capable of producing that product that can compete internationally as well. And abantu basemzansi, they must always be reassured ukuthi we are exposed to them and we are exposed to their needs and wants. So this is a great initiative in taking the message across, and for us to say to them, Guti, just be proud, man. You know, you are South African first. You could aspire to be international, but you have to come back home.
You are one of the few judges for this selection. What are you looking out for?
So the main element that we're looking for is someone who is embracing their proudly South African culture. Whether and when I say culture, it doesn't necessarily mean your traditional way, but it is also speaking to something that is made locally on South African soil. And it is important that we embrace who we are, because anywhere in the world, people, they embrace who they are. They embrace their heritage, their culture, and it is our responsibility as South Africans to ensure that we preserve our culture, our heritage, our customs, and also celebrating what we can make. So we're looking for people who are proudly standing steadfast in that.
So the brand keeps growing. What's next for you guys?
If you're from South Africa, you know what you are alive with possibility. I think for the brand, or for the owners of the brand, we went into retail at a very young age. We were kids and we got exposed to so much in terms of the business of fashion. We've never been designers. We've only learned to be designers recently, but we've always been involved in the business of fashion. So I think what's next is, let's showcase our talent. It's time to now take our brands internationally and to show them what's culturally South African and embrace that. And it's possible. And I'm going to make an example of Black Coffee. When he goes internationally, he doesn't showcase what's internationally. He showcases what is proudly South African. And the world is accepting it, and the world is embracing it. So that means there's appetite. The world is ready for what's coming out of South Africa and out of Africa.
The Phenomenal Women Concert, a celebration of women bringing together the power of music, dance and poetry on one stage, took place on the 9th of August at the Nirox Sculpture Park in celebration of Women's Day in South Africa. The event, hosted by Absa Bank, honored the strength, beauty and creativity of women through performances that inspire, uplift and ignite the spirit of unity. Amongst the performers was singer Zolani Mahola and her all-female band.
After being with Fresh Gun was a predominantly male outfit, which was fine. Like, that's not in itself like an issue, but it was just afterwards I needed to find a space to just connect with my own voice and just my own artistry. And I just found that working with women is such a different way of being. You know, there's such a generosity of flow when we're together as women. There's so much more forgiveness. There's so much more, I don't know, like just like space for us all to take up that space. So that's what I've been enjoying really with this Feminine Force project. So really I've been developing it since 2019, which was the last year that I had with Freshly Ground after 17 years.
Just a message for women. It's
Yes,
Women's Month.
yes, I've got a message for women. You know, women, we are the backbone of this country. We are the backbone of this country. This country does not run without us. We must recognize our power. We need to recognize our power. And if it means we need to take to the streets, let's take to the streets. The level to which women are disrespected in our country, Gandhi, even though we are, as I say, the backbone, is insane. It's unimaginable. When we are the ones, Lokshina or Mama, raising the kids, you know, keeping the backbones of the societies going, and yet we are bashed about, we are raped at an unimaginable rate. You know, we've got so much that is against it. It can't be, and it can't continue. Even if it's not just for us, but for the coming girls and the coming children that are coming, we can't settle like this. So as women, we need to recognize our power and use our voices in the spaces where we can.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday for Channel Africa, I am Ntlanhla Mahlangu.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, that's how we come to a close for Africa Rise and Shine on this 15th of August, as well as this whole week. But coming up on Channel Africa is On the Move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palisa Tawe, and they're in the studio to tell us what to expect today, wearing shades and all. It's a Friday look.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
this is the Friday look.
I wasn't given the memo.
Good morning, guys. Well, of course, every Friday we give you all the entertainment and a good time here. We're going to be speaking about a festival that's coming up, one that really embodies family, but not just through blood relation, but through spiritual family, through sharing and creating stories and traditions here on the African continent. It's called the Folklore Festival, and it's going to be taking place next month with the King Folk as its central theme. The festival will be inviting us to reconnect with one another through storytelling. There'll be artists like the Mahotela Queens, Ndoro, and we'll be chatting about that in today's first hour.
Hey man, we also have a Women's Month theme in the second hour. We're going to be looking at black women photographers on the African continent. What role do they play? Do they shift the narrative? Do they have a different visual perspective? So that's what's also coming up, and you'll be happy that we're going to Zimbabwe for the third hour.
Tatenda Zguru. Aiwa, Maita. What's happening in Zimbabwe?
We'll be chatting to female Afro pop and R&B artist Shashi from Zimbabwe in today's final hour.
Fantastic.
I love that name, Shashi. It's so catchy.
Right?
Does it mean? What does it
and
mean?
I'm gonna teach you the meaning of Zimbabwe, because I don't think a lot of people
what
know.
Is it?
What does
Tell
it
us.
mean?
So, Imba is a house.
Okay.
Yamabwe of stone.
Okay.
So
House of stone.
Zimba is a really big house. Zimba Yamabwe.
Oh,
a big house of stone. So if you go to the Great Zimbabwe, you'll see the big house of stone. And that's the name Zimbabwe.
I wish I kept that for my vintage Africa. As a
there
feature.
you go.
Too late now.
Too late now.
Right, that's how we end the show officially now, as we say goodbye as the Rise and Shine team. My name is Asanda, Beda. We'll do this next week, Monday, 6
Yes,
to 9.
indeed. Can you believe it's the middle of the month already?
Yeah.
I mean, this year's going by so fast. August, it's going to be spring in 2 weeks' time.
I'm looking forward to that.
Eh?
Besides the sinuses, but I'm looking forward to the weather that comes with that.
My goodness. And today you're going to be watching the National Convention.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about it the whole week.
The whole week.
Yeah, that's how we say goodbye. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. And don't forget to stay with us, because Benjamin and Palisa have got a packed show, as they've just been describing now. I'm looking forward particularly to the third hour, which is going to be the Zimbabwe artist feature. But coming up next, we have the news with Onele Nsinsi, as well as the sports headlines with Musibudi Makura. From me and Asanda,
bye-bye.
Take care.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the South African National Convention and National Dialogue goes ahead as planned, and the Russian President Vladimir Putin praises his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The South African presidency says the National Convention and National Dialogue will go ahead as planned despite the withdrawal of several foundations. Last week, several prominent legacy foundations announced their withdrawal from the gatherings. They include the Steve Biko, Thabo Mbeki, Chief Albert Luthuli, as well as Oliver and Adelaide Tambo foundations. The foundations